February 14, 2018 is the Valentine's Day that Brendan Duff will never forget. Brendan was sitting in his apartment at Elon University, 750 miles away from his hometown in Parkland, Florida. He had decided to skip class to work on a project that was due later that day and take a few minutes for a video call with one of his best friends from high school. As he was writing an email to his professor to explain his absence, his best friend gave him the news that would change his life forever.
And all of a sudden, my friend from high school starts trying to get my attention really urgently. And I'm like, hold on one second, I'm almost done with this email. And she's like, no, Brennan, this is really serious. Can you come back to the camera? And I'm asking for 2 more seconds. And she says, Brennan, there's an active shooter at Stoneman Douglas, which was our alma mater in Parkland, Florida. And I thought about how I had been on lockdown before in my old high school in New Jersey before we moved for a domestic violence incident involving a firearm, and how we were able to be cleared out and everyone was okay. So I told myself that it was something that had to be similar to that sort of scenario. I told myself that that kind of thing doesn't really happen in Parkland. And that was a big mistake, because it can happen anywhere, and that's exactly the problem.
Welcome to PR Future, the podcast that delivers interesting insights into the dynamic world of public relations. In our first few episodes, we're going to focus on taking a deeper dive into what we call new activism, to better understand how activists are using communications to change the world. Today, we follow the journey of Brendan Duff, a co-founder of March for Our Lives, an organization that began as a student-led demonstration that brought together nearly 1 million people to demand action against gun violence. Brendan and his young colleagues used their nascent communication skills to spark a movement that has become a household name. Now they're combining their passion for a cause with the tools of public relations to achieve long-lasting change. I'm Fred Cook from the USC Center for Public Relations at the Annenberg School, and this is PR Future. As Brendan learned more about what had happened at Marjory Stoneman Douglas that day, he realized that the lives of his closest friends and even his own family were in serious danger.
I immediately thought of some of my best friends that still went there, some people that I had gone to school with and kept in close contact with, who would later emerge as some of the most prominent figures for March for Our Lives. And I texted them to see if they were okay and to get any updates that I could from them. But I didn't immediately think of my little brother Daniel, who had only just started his freshman year at MSD a few months prior to the shooting. I was able to get in touch with most of my friends from high school, and I had learned that they were all in one room together and they were safe. And they told me that the shooter entered what we had known as the freshman building. And all I knew was that Daniel had most of his classes in that building. One friend of mine, Alex Wind, who was later a huge part of the March for Our Lives, got in touch with me, and he told me that he was with Daniel. Daniel and some others had ran into a closet when they heard gunshots, and Daniel wasn't able to bring his phone and get his phone in time and bring it into the closet, which had explained why I wasn't able to get in touch with him. I did learn that Daniel was safe, and I learned that my mom, who is a substitute teacher, she was teaching at the middle school, which is directly adjacent to the high school's campus. I learned that they were okay, and I posted on Facebook immediately to let the relatives and friends that I couldn't get in touch with know that they were safe. At the end of this, within 6 minutes, there were 17 people killed and 17 more injured and thousands forever traumatized. So after that, I packed whatever I could from Elon and from North Carolina, and I just immediately drove down to Parkland to be there with my family and my friends in whatever way they needed me.
And then how did this chaos around this shooting evolve into an organization of you and some of your friends to create March for Our Lives?
We were pissed. We were really infuriated that this had happened to us, and that there were people that we knew that lives were forever changed, and they were never going to get what they lost back. We were just really upset that we had gotten to a place in our country where this was almost somewhat expected. And so we saw this huge influx of media come into Parkland, and there were media trucks on every corner, people constantly trying to stop you and get you to interview. And some of my friends, that they weren't exactly saying what the media thought and expected us to say, which was, you can't believe that this happens. You never think that it's going to happen to you until it does. But our message was going to be, actually, we can believe that it happened because we had been brought up in a culture where it was completely normal. Most of the kids in Gen Z and the kids that we were working with were born after Columbine, and they were coming of age during Sandy Hook and during Pulse. So this is definitely part of their culture. I think that fury kind of turned into an energy where we said, okay, people are watching, and reporters and media were constantly reaching out to these students on their social media platforms and saying, can we schedule an interview with you at this time? We want to hear what you have to say about this. What's your take on this? And just constantly wanted to hear from the students. And we realized that this message of kind of not accepting the narrative that they were trying to put on Parkland was working with people, and it was resonating with people. So that's when we decided that we really had to kind of harness this energy and turn it into something that was a little bit more actionable than just our words and our theory. It had to be something that people could look towards positively. So that's when all of the gears started turning and the juices started flowing to give them something to do, which ended up being the March for Our Lives.
But the road to a global movement certainly wasn't smooth. Organizing effectively takes time, but Brendan and his friends didn't want to waste their time waiting around while the media tension died down. So they immediately reached out to their closest friends and got to work.
So it was entirely organically. It was, you could possibly even say haphazardly. It was really just whoever was available to us. So basically the way that it initially started was Cameron Caskey, who's one of my best friends in high school, reached out and to me, and he said, Brendan, I'm getting just way too many media requests right now. He knew that I had an internship before doing PR, and he knew that I was studying strategic communications. So he was like, is there any way you can help me with the media relations? Of course, we didn't call it that at that time. We didn't know. But he was like, is there any way you can help? I'm just getting massive requests for interviews. And I was like, of course, whatever you need me to do, I'll help you do it. So the reason I say it was haphazardly is because by no means did we sit everyone down in one room and say, you're going to talk about this part of the message. You're going to talk about this. You are going to have this role. This is going to be your responsibility. It was completely as it was all coming in. So it was started with Cameron asking me to help manage these media contacts and these interview requests he was getting. And it grew into then needing more people to comment about this and to talk about this. So we grew, and then we needed more people to do operations. So we pulled in Jackie Corin. But it was really just based off of people that we knew in high school, we had been friends with, and we had been able to rely on in the past. It was completely raw, completely organic, just started off the passion of not being able to just sit in bed and be upset about something. I don't think that the initial shock wore off for months, to be completely honest, but I do think that in those first couple of days after, people did not want to just be upset about this and just be sitting in bed by themselves. They wanted to be heard, and I think that we tried really hard to give people that outlet.
It sounds a little bit like you became the PR person for this group. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, it's a funny story, actually. By that Saturday, we had organized a rally in Fort Lauderdale, and this we knew was going to be highly televised, and we knew that there were going to be a lot of reporters there, a lot of elected officials, and we were like, this is the time to show people that we are harnessing this power. We have a plan for this. It's not just going to be the typical aftermath of a shooting where it's 2 weeks of media coverage and then everything goes away. So we were collecting as many business cards as we could have, talking to as many reporters as we possibly could have, just really bolstering our Rolodex, sort of, just to be able to call on people when we needed them. It was that rally that Emma Gonzalez had her We Call BS speech.
They say that no laws could have been able to prevent the hundreds of senseless tragedies that have occurred. We call BS! That us kids don't know what we're talking about, that we're too young to understand how the government works. We call BS!
And that just completely saturated the media, and everyone wanted to hear from Emma, and everyone was looking to Emma as a leader of this movement. And so we just got so many requests pouring through her. And she didn't have a Twitter at this time. She didn't use social media. She's definitely not social media savvy, but we made her an account, and the requests coming in were absolutely absurd, from Martin Luther King's son to Demi Lovato, and people wanting to get in touch with Emma Gonzalez and just thank her and send her money, send her support, everything that you can imagine. So David Hogg came in from a really long interview with Emma and Delaney and Cameron, and he was like, "This is absolutely insane. We need a communications manager." And Cameron like just looked to me and gave me all like this huge stack of business cards that he had and said, "Brendan, I think that's you." And I just took the stack and I was like, "All right, I'll take care of it."
Managing the media for March for Our Lives took a lot of preparation. To focus on building one clear message for the entire campaign, Brendan conducted media training with the team for 72 hours straight, making sure they all had a cohesive message. To figure out how this message would resonate and who should be delivering it, like any PR professional, Brendan turned to social media.
We saw which people were getting the biggest Twitter followings, which people were getting the biggest support, and we used those people as our spokespeople. And of course, with Twitter and with social media, we had this information available to us. We didn't need to do a ton of research. We didn't need to outsource and have people do like focus groups or polling or anything like that. We were able to directly see the support that people were getting, and knew then that these people would resonate with Americans. So that ended up being David Hogg, Emma Gonzalez, Cameron Kasky, Alex Wind, and Jacqueline Corin that were our 5 spokespeople for the big announcement, the dropping of the march. And yeah, it was crazy, but we wanted to make sure that everyone was on message and everyone was appropriately media trained before we really took this message to the world.
And how did you decide in this very short period of time what to do next about the march in Washington? How was that decision made? Because a month later, you had this massive march.
We knew that we had a really small window of time to be able to make this message as impactful and as salient as it could have been. So the first big effort, we coordinated a hashtag effort that was, we all tweeted hashtag never again at 3 p.m. on that Friday, so 2 days after the shooting, with the goal of getting it trending on social media. And at the time, we were like, we have no idea if this is going to work at all. We were just really texting everyone in our contacts, tweeting out to the 10,000 followers we had at the time, which was definitely a lot, but we didn't expect to have this huge movement birthed out of it. And we, at 3 p.m., we all tweeted hashtag never again with our own personal little messages, making sure that hashtag never again students would feel, et cetera, and with our own little brands, our own little unique take on it. And then we saw by 3:10 that it was trending in the United States. And this wasn't just for us on Twitter. It wasn't just for my algorithm stream. It was for the entire United States. And it was trending number 1 within the hour. And we were like, whoa, okay, this is way bigger than what we thought it could be. We wanted to say, look, we're going to do more than just be in the media for 2 weeks and cry on the media and say, we can't believe that this has happened. We're going to show you how we're going to prevent it from happening to other places. We're going to make a youth coalition across the United States and make sure that our rally cry is heard, but specifically among young people, resonating with that. This is an issue that uniquely affects young people. And so we wanted to give people an outlet to be able to show their support rather than just saying, hey, you can donate and support us and follow us on these different channels and these different social media platforms. We were saying, no, this is the day, March 24th. We are all going to stand up as a nation, as a planet, because it ended up being so much more than just the United States, to say that enough is enough, and we are not going to accept this narrative that gun violence is an unsolvable problem within the United States.
We surveyed PR professionals who said overwhelmingly that social media was the most effective tool for activists. And then we asked activists the same question, and they said social media was important, but not nearly as important as the PR people, because they named books, they named events, direct mail, a lot of other things that were billboards that were important. So tell me about the sort of the pros and cons of social media as an activist, and what other tools you think are equally important.
Yeah, so just beginning with the pros, like it absolutely lifted our organization off the ground. There is no doubt about that. We were able to reach and connect with people far more than just supporters, but donors and people who are offering resources and ways to really make sure that this message was resonating with people. Like we were able to get in touch with all those people, but also people that were just retweeting us, supporting our message, following us, which, obviously meant a lot to us and was able to carry our message forward in a number of other different ways. We didn't want to just say, hey, we're going to do this in a month, we'll see you there. We wanted to say, go to March for Our Lives on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, on the website, wherever you get your news, wherever you get your information, or wherever you follow the most. We'll be there. We'll be giving you information. We'll be giving you updates on how we're going to make this message so powerful. So social media absolutely turned our message into a global movement right off the bat. We started our first March for Our Lives Twitter account, which was called Never Again at the time. We first started that the night after the shootings. By the end of that night, we had about 15,000 followers. Then the end of the day, Friday, we had about 30,000 followers. And then the end of the day, Saturday, especially after Emma's speech went viral and she had gotten the tweet from Demi Lovato wanting to get in touch with her and everything, our page had like 200,000 followers. And it was just because we had kept returning to social media, kept giving people updates and saying, hey, maybe we haven't been super vocal in the last 4 hours. Here's what we've been working on. And we were giving people something to follow so they could feel like they were a part of the movement too, and they were part of this massive development. It does present challenges where, you have to remind yourself frequently that Twitter and social media does not represent real population and real public opinion. So that's where I think that you're seeing so much information from activists come in about things like traditional strategies like billboards and books and other means of reaching people, because I think activists are really starting to get attuned to the idea that Twitter does not represent America or the world. And there are other ways to kind of break through that echo chamber to still reach people.
So some of the more traditional tactics have become more popular with activists because they're reaching different people that are not on social media.
Right. That's exactly right.
Did you seek any adult advice on this, or was this strategy completely the brainchild of you and your group?
Other gun violence prevention groups were extremely helpful in galvanizing their own networks and making sure that that people were going to attend the march and lending their resources to do so. But I will say that in terms of strategy and in terms of narrative and messaging and tactics, it was unabashedly youth-led. It was a product of all of us saying, we want to make sure that people understand that we are not a mouthpiece or a talking piece for any candidate, for any issue, for any group.
And one of the things our survey discovered is that it seems like this new activism is driven very much by young people, not only in America, but around the world. And what is the power of that youth activism? What do you see as the key to the success of that?
Yeah, I think it's almost like it causes people to take a step back and think about their entire situation holistically. So we knew that people were going to come out in opposition against us and say, look, these are a bunch of radical young kids that want to live in an ideal world that's not going to happen, and pigeonhole us into all these stereotypes to, take the weight out of our message and to kind of disqualify us and discredit us from the conversation. But I think that that's kind of what was the power of the organization, was that it forced people to take a step back and kind of feel empathy for these kids that they might be able to see themselves in, they might be able to see their friends in, their children in, and say, whoa, okay, yeah, maybe I do have to rethink this here. Maybe something that like I had believed before or the messaging that I had bought into before isn't exactly what I think it is or what I initially once thought it was. And so I think that our age really was able to evoke that empathy in people that maybe they wouldn't have seen if it had been someone their age that they had kind of become a little jaded to.
Making sure the voice of Parkland students was heard wasn't their only goal. From there, Brendan and his friends developed a long-term plan that would take their movement to the next level. Stay tuned for the following episode, where we'll learn more about Brendan's role in reimagining March for Our Lives, the relationships they've established with the corporate world, and what the future holds for this impressive group of young activists. Thanks for tuning in to PR Future, a progressive podcast created for PR professionals by PR professionals. To learn more, tap the link in the show notes to download your copy of New Activism. And subscribe to our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows. Today's episode was produced by Ron Antoinette, Zazu Lippert, and Manuelita Maldonado. Special thanks to Kathy Park, Devin Herod, and Sandra Stenisa, all from the USC Center for Public Relations. I'm your host, Fred Cook, and this is PR Future.